Another rant. See if I can make a short rant. I'm so sick of people and their agendas. People send me shit all the time about, the spike in crime and the spike in shootings and the spike in, Asians being beat up by like homeless black people or crazed or deranged black people. And the media tries to spin it and say it's a hate crime and we got to have, anti-Asian, hate crime bills that, people on the right try to run with and say, yes, because black people are the ones attacking Asians, right? And we all know who came up with the phrase Kung Flu and China virus and the Chinese Exclusion Act and the Japanese internment camps and all this yellow peril shit that's been going on forever that's come from white folks, but they want to blame black folks. I mean, it's just amazing at how people drink the Kool-Aid on this shit and they fall for all these damn traps, right? Then you got the shit in New York. Shootings are up, black on black violence is up. You got all these young black men running around on their gang shit, right? And you got both sides of the political spectrum that want to, cater to their agendas. So the Democrats are going to be like, oh, we need more gun control, right? Even though New York has the most insane levels of gun control that there possibly are, and yet they still have shootings, and they're talking about the spike in crime and the spike in shootings, right? But then they'll turn around and talk about, we have less gun violence and less gun deaths, than other states, right? That'll be their argument while simultaneously talking about how, the crime is just all over the place and it's just crazy. They just had some federal prosecutor in New York get killed. Not too long ago, they had a mother of two and her friend, who she was at the memorial of her friend, and then some guys rolled up and shot the memorial up, right? And this is the part that gets me, right? So the right is like, we need gun control. They don't want to address the economic issues that cause all of the the gun violence, right? Where there's poverty, there is crime, period. Then you go over to the right, and then the right, if I said left, if I didn't say left first, I meant left. So the left is all about the gun control. The right is all about, you can't defund the police, which I hate the phrase defund police because it's a misnomer, right? The whole aspect of defund the police is there needs to be resources allocated to dealing with situations in a different way, different departments. Every time, if somebody has a schizophrenic son and they call the police because their son is having an episode, that doesn't mean that the cops should show up with SWAT team or cops should show up, ready to shoot somebody because you have somebody who's mentally unstable. They need to have better training. They need to have, certain people that can better deal with those type of situations, right? And I'm saying, this goes on in Europe all the time. I don't know if you ever saw that guy that it was in London, I think, and he had a knife and he was, trying to stab people. And the cops, what they did is they had a whole bunch of cops with these big ass riot shields, and they basically surrounded him until to the point where like a whole football team, literally with the shields, surrounded this guy, and he couldn't move, and he had to freaking basically just drop the knife because there was no getting out of the situation. That's a perfect example of again trying to save lives. I had an argument with Reno May because Reno May put up some video because they were teaching cops to shoot people in the legs, and I'm like, why not? Why can't it be an arsenal in a police officer's bag? Because I don't know how many times we see videos where you get these cops, they got all day to shoot the guy in the legs, and it's like they're just sitting there waiting for the guy to do something so they could say, I was in fear for my life, so I had to dump a magazine into his chest. And I'm like, dude, you had a leg shot on this guy all day, right? These are the same cops that run around, I can hit, the A zone while moving and all this other shit, but all of a sudden, they're terrible shots and they can't shoot somebody in the leg at 15 yards away, right? Then people are like, oh, what about the femoral artery? What about it? What the hell do you have a tourniquet on your rifle for? You know what I'm saying? Hit the guy in the legs, let him quiver in pain, and patch the guy up, put the tourniquet on, and hopefully you'll get to the hospital in enough time. That's better than shooting somebody in the chest. If you ask most people, would they rather be shot in the leg or shot in the chest, they would rather be shot in the leg. period. You know, the survivability of getting shot in the chest versus shot in the leg isn't even comparable. But I got to argue with Reno May about this bullshit because, you know, Bull Lives Matter and cops and all this other bullshit, which, again, I get sick and tired of the white Second Amendment community that in one breath, they love police officers. Police officers are their best friend as long as they're checking the niggas. But then as soon as it comes to the Second Amendment, storming the Capitol, you know, we're coming to take your guns, kicking your front door, ATF, kill your dog, then all of a sudden now it's from my cold dead hands. The tree of liberty must be refreshed with the blood of the patriots and tyrants. I'm so sick and tired of people talking out of both sides of their face. Okay. But again, going back to the whole New York shit and the shootings all across the country, and I'm like, what do you expect? It's a fucking pandemic. Like, we're not out, like, you got shortages are coming, right? Because manufacturers didn't want to produce more stuff that they didn't know when the pandemic was going to be over, and then nobody was going to buy. Right, so food shortages are coming, you know, and all type of supply chain issues are coming. Prices are going to go up. You know, a lot of people are, you know, they lost the job that they had before, or that company or that business that they were working for is no longer there. You know, so a lot of people out here struggling, and again, black people who are already on life support and poverty. And then you hit them with a pandemic. Like, there's going to be a lot of them that are not going to be able to survive the shit, and they're going to resort to crime. I don't care if you had every standing police officer on the street of New York or any other city. There is not enough there are not enough cops to go around in order to handle all of that. On top of the fact that they let people out of the jails because of COVID, and, you know, they let the non-violent felons and some people who may have had issues, or some people who are very likely to commit violence, they just didn't commit the violent act, so they kind of got out on the skin of their teeth. And so now they're, you know, in the community during a pandemic. Crime is going to go up. And so you got the stupid New York NYPD cops running around saying that the gun violence in New York is a result of people saying defund the police, when, like, defund the police, like, you tell me what has actually happened with defund the police. You tell me what is actually going on besides police officers, you know, they're feeling a lack of morale, and you got a bunch of police officers who willingly quit. But where's the policies that have been put in place? Joe Biden comes up with a policy for violence against Asians or some bullshit like that. But yet the whole thing that kicked off all the rioting and the protesting over the summer, we haven't seen a bill for that shit. But yet these whiny ass NYPD cops are sitting up there, and it's because we can't do our job because people are screaming us with defund. That ain't got a fucking thing to do with it. Bunch of bitch ass, whiny, crybaby NYPD cops. You know, these fucking what do you call it? What do you call this shit? It's always the same motherfuckers. It's always these Irish motherfuckers in the that are part of the police association with their thick ass Irish accents, because being a police officer and being a part of the police union and shit has always been connected to being Irish and shit, because that was the only way that Irish people who were discriminated against when they first came to this country, that's how they got over. Right? Jewish people changed their last names. Irish people became the police. Right? That's why you see police officers, look at their last names: O'Malley, O'Harry, O'Connor, McDonald, McAllister. You know what I mean? All these guys got Irish last names and shit. You know, so they're up there. Oh, it's always some guy with that, you know, that real, like, New York accent. That's always up there. You know, it's because of the police, you know, and to defund the police, or the Black Lives Matter, you know. Shut the fuck up. You know, I mean, they're so irritating with that shit. But you know, so everybody's got their bullshit ass agenda. The liberals, oh, we gotta like, and I want you to think about this. Like, the cops, like the New York cops, are like, oh, we're so needed, and it's because of defund the police in a city, right? And this is the funny part, right? The cops support the Republicans because they think that the Republicans are, like, pro-cop and all that other shit, right? But yet, it's the New York cops that enforce the liberal gun laws that prevent everybody else from being able to protect themselves from the criminals in New York, which make them need the NYPD and need the police officers instead of being able to reduce crime themselves, because criminals don't know who has a gun and who doesn't have a gun. So maybe running up on this group of people or trying to rob this group of people or whatever is not such a good idea when the supposed potential victims could shoot back. So like New York is just a clusterfuck of hypocrisy in my opinion, because I'm like, okay, so you're NYPD, you're the New York cops, you support Donald Trump, you support Republicans. Okay, so you should be in favor of New York citizens being armed and having firearms. But no, they don't support that. You go through JFK or LaGuardia and you try to transport your firearm, you're going to get slammed. The NYPD is going to arrest you. Then they're going to have the prosecutors, the liberal prosecutors and all that, throw the fucking book at you. You know, and you're not going to hear the NYPD and all these supposed we're conservative, we support Donald Trump, police officers in New York sit there and say, well, we support the Second Amendment and we support law-abiding citizens having firearms. No, what they do is they create this blanket rhetoric where we don't believe that anybody in New York should have a gun. And that justifies the whole idea that, see, you need us to police, and you need us to enforce, because without us, you all are just cannon fodder for the criminals of New York. I'm like, why don't you let people protect each other? Oh, no. We don't want to do. I thought you were a Republican. Yes, we are Republican because Donald Trump and the conservatives are pro-cop, but that's the only reason we're Republican, because of the pro-cop stamps. But we don't really believe in freedom and liberty and allowing people to be able to protect themselves. The same conservative tenets that everybody in the conservative party actually subscribe. We don't believe in that shit. No. We don't subscribe to that shit. You see the hypocrisy? You see the bullshit? They're like the people that sit up in church, like, oh no, it's Christianity a la carte. I'll have some of this, I'll have some of that. Oh my God, not having sex before marriage. Oh no, you can keep that. Like, that's literally the NYPD. We support all conservative tenets except for the part that embraces the Second Amendment. And like I said, on the other side, liberals, we need gun control, because, we're not going to do anything to address the underlying issues that are the reason why, the crime is rising in the first place. I mean, crime in the black community was already high before the pandemic. And then the pandemic hits and people are out of work. Big mama loses her job, whatever support, the grandparents lose their job, whatever support that the young youth were getting is now gone. And so they out there trying to get it out the mud, which leads them to criminality, which leads them to violence, which leads them into, survival mode. Most of those guys, you watch the interviews, go watch any of the interviews of the gangbangers where they're like, look, man, that's like the one guy I was watching some videos, some guy in Chicago, he was a gangster disciple. And he was like, look, man, the reporter was like, well, why are you carrying a gun? Me walking out the house without a gun is like me saying, fuck my life. I'd rather get caught by the police, do 3 years or 5 years or whatever, for having possession of a firearm than being out there caught by my enemy who I know is going to kill me. I'd rather sit in jail than, like he said, do life in the cemetery. Like, fuck that. You know what I mean? So a lot of these people are doing this out of survival, out of necessity, because where's the economic opportunities? Where's those factories that existed back in the 1960s and shit like that? And then again, you get over to the conservatives. Oh, we can't compete. We can't pay people $15 an hour. We can't pay people livable and decent wages and all that shit. The same wages funny is the same wages that were the type of wages that were being paid when men could actually support their entire family and be the only working man in the family back when these conservatives are running around saying, make America great again. Make America great again. What time period do you want to go back to? The 1950s? The 1960s? Again, more hypocrisy. Yeah, we want to go back to when it was real white supremacy, but we want to completely ignore the fact that back in the 50s and the 60s, again, like that bridge in Trenton says, we make what the world takes. America was a manufacturing hub. But again, we don't believe in unionized wages. These companies, these businesses, we're pro-business. They can't compete. And all those companies did was take those jobs overseas to China and now Vietnam. in Southeast Asia. And then again, once their standard of living gets too high and those Asian people are demanding more and unions and all that other shit, you know what's going to happen? They're going to say, all right, we're picking up our shit and we're going to another third world country. We'll go to Africa, or we'll go to South Africa. We'll go to another continent where people are struggling and we can pay them pennies on the dollar to manufacture these goods, and then we're going to import them back in the United States and then say, hey, you American citizens, you need to buy our goods that you can't afford because you don't have a job. Like the shit is just like, I swear this country is going to fucking collapse. And not for the what do you want to call it, the sort of the reasons that people want to come up with that like justify their position. You get what I'm saying? Like they want to sit there and like blame the other side as to why shit is collapsing, as opposed to seeing it for what it is. Like I said, you got the white guys, the right conservatives running around talking about build a wall and shit. And I'm like, why don't you get on the ass of the white dudes that are hiring them, at Home Depot at 6 and 7 o'clock in the morning? Why don't you get on their ass? Oh, now all of a sudden they're quiet. People are full of shit. I'm so sick of people bitching and complaining and pointing a finger and all this other shit. And they're full of shit. They're just straight up full of shit. It's just, and the media just keeps playing it up, and the media just goes out there and, like panders to each side to make each side think this, that, and the third. And I'm like, this shit is dumb. It's so dumb. We see the problem is defund the police. No, see the problem is we need more gun control. I'm like, y'all ain't never gonna address the root of the problem. You're just not. You're not. And here you got black people stuck in the middle who it's like they're just as dumb as well because they can't see it for what it is. Oh, the liberals are our saviors. And then here comes Joe Biden with more symbolism. Hell, black people don't even get into symbolism because as far as what went down with that Asian bill, that was symbolism for Asians. So it's symbolism on top of symbolism. So we don't even get the symbolism anymore. Not that the symbolism, meant a whole bunch or that it had a whole bunch of weight to it, but I'm like, we don't even get the symbolism. I mean, talk about fuck you, right? I'm so sick of this shit. I'm so sick of people's inability to have a nuanced conversation. I'm so sick of people acting like, it's 100% of this. That's what it is. I'm like, so you're just going to ignore all this over here. You just none of this is a factor because you have your agenda. So you're not even going to consider. That's why I stopped fucking with Ben Shapiro, because he's this all or none motherfucker. Like I'm like, dude, I can't even take you seriously. And that's how most of the commentators, whether they be on the right or whether they be on the left, it's all or none. It's all or none. I'm like, come on, man. Like you got to look at it for what it is. I'm not saying that what you're saying, I'm not saying that there isn't a component here, but you also got to look at the component over here. You're not just going to come in the room and act like, oh, it's not a component. Like that, somebody sent me that clip of that white girl talking about black people do commit more crimes, but we're not going to consider everything that was done to cripple the black community. We're not going to talk about redlining. We're not going to talk about blockbusting. We're not going to talk about denial of FHA loans. We're not going to talk about the Iran-Contraing and dumping narcotics in the black community, right? We're not going to talk about the assassination of black leaders that we're talking about personal responsibility and black people being self-sufficient. We're not going to talk about that. We're not going to talk about Malcolm X. We're not going to talk about Medgar Evers. We're not going to talk about Martin Luther King. Once he got on economics, then they had to take his ass out. We're not going to talk about Richard Aoki, who was used as an FBI informant, to basically undermine the Black Panthers and provide them with weaponry so that they could instigate a fight between the police and the Black Panthers to shift popular opinion against the Black Panthers. You see, we're not going to talk about the assassination of Fred Hampton. We're not going to talk about that. The list just goes on and on of how the black community, was fucked. We're not going to talk about crack cocaine disparities. We're not going to talk about that. We're not going to talk about disproportionate policing, in the black community. Nope, we're not going to talk about that. We're not going to talk about discrimination in the workplace, in the job market, right? White people, oh, black people, we don't want you reading because we don't want a slave revolt. Oh, shit. Oh, well, black people, we can't hire you because you're not educated. You don't have any education, but we're going to prevent you from entering into these universities to get your education until Brown versus Board of Education. Oh, black people, now that you got your education and you got your degrees, oh, shit, too many black people are educated. Oh, fuck, what do we do? Oh, well, you're overqualified. Sorry, you're overqualified. So we went from not having the credentials, which is why we can't get the job, to now we're overqualified. The shit is just it's retarded. It's insane. But white people want to pretend and play these games like, oh, we don't know what you're talking about. You all just commit more crimes intrinsically, and that's just what it is. And we're not gonna factor anything else into the pot. It's just insane. We're not gonna talk about COINTELPRO. We're not gonna talk about that. All these things you can pull, they're documented. You can pull them up. But no. We're not going to talk about that. So and again, you get these talking heads, these people whose whole job is basically like not only divide and conquer, but to agitate, to trigger people and piss people off to the point that they can't even sit down at a table and look at the situation and be like, look, it's a little bit of this, it's a little bit of this, or it's mostly this, but I will acknowledge that you got some of this going on as well, right? No, you can't. There is none of that. They do not want that. They want there to be these we'll just pander to one side, we'll piss off a bunch of people, and then next week we'll pander to the other side and we'll piss them off, and we'll just go back and forth and back and forth. And then, again, the freaking fat cats sitting up there on Wall Street and the bankers and everybody else, they're just sitting there going, moo ha 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 ha, moo ha 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 ha, because they're the real people that are fucking everybody over. Again, class comes before race. Good luck trying to tell working class whites that, because they always believe that, somehow they will be embraced by, the white elite. And if they behave, that they will be elevated. It's the same thing as coons. It's the exact same thing. Why do you get black people who go off code? Because white Zaddy, all he got to come through and throw some money around. And then next thing you know, the coons pop up. You see Mark Lamont Hill. Remember, like I said, he got fired from CNN because he said something about Jewish people. And then now he's up there talking about black people, we must support Israel. We must. And this is trans oppression. What the fuck is transnational oppression? What the fuck is that? Nigga just making shit up. You know what I mean? And again, the people out here, they eat that shit up. They eat it up. Yes, you're right. You're right, Mark Lamont Hill. You're right. Fuck it. Oh my God, man. I can't stand this shit. I can't stand this shit. Every day I see these articles that people send me, these YouTube video clips that people send me, and I'm sitting there and I'm saying to myself, I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Like I can see the fuckery in the post. Like even the titles are triggering. You know what I mean? Like even the titles are triggering, and I can get to the bottom. Like if I see an article, and blah 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 blah, gun violence, I'm like, I already know by the time I get to this end of this article, it's going to be a piece about how we need more gun control, and we have a healthcare crisis in America with the pandemic of gun violence and this, that, and the third. When seriously speaking, gun violence is profoundly a drop in the bucket when compared to everything else. It pulls on people's heartstrings. They see it on television and shit like that. Yeah, mass shooters worry people more than, gang violence and shit. Now, when gang violence spills out of, the black community in the inner city, that's when white people get worried. But like mass shootings, they terrify everybody, because you could be like, it's not like inner city violence. It's like inner city violence is like, you stay out of the ghetto, you won't get shot. Okay, but when it spills out of the ghetto, that's when white folks get scared, and that's typically when they jump up and they're like, we have to do something, right? But the whole attitude about mass shootings is we have to do something because, that can happen and you can't avoid it. It's not something that's avoidable, even though, again, it's a rare unicorn drop in the bucket. But the reality is if people are going to have the right to defend themselves and protect themselves, not just from a tyrannical government, but also to be able to protect themselves against, criminals, that exist in the community, like that comes with the territory, and nobody wants to accept that. You know what I mean? I mean, we are entering, a phase of where people like the problems are going to get bad, and what's going to happen is people are going to start really struggling. I mean, across the board. Right now, people aren't feeling it yet, and then they're going to beg government, like Senator Palpatine in Star Wars. They're going to beg government to do something, and they're going to give up their rights. It'll give the government supreme emergency powers. The government will become entirely too big, bloated, and inflated, and they will have, absolute power and control. And again, gun control will be a thing of the past at that point because it will already be enacted, and then it'll just be, fucking stormtroopers walking around this bitch. Like, that's what it's going to look like. It's going to look like the Empire, with Senator Palpatine in control. Like, people everybody acts like this shit can't happen. They act like it's fantasy for people to speak on this shit. Oh, was 9/11 fantasy? I'm pretty sure if I said, in 1999 that some planes, some terrorists were going to hijack a plane and slam it into the towers, y'all would have told me that sounds like some movie shit. That sounds like that would never happen. America would never be attacked on American soil. But then 9/11 happened and the towers came down and all that other shit. So some of y'all who lack imagination, you need to get one real quick. Because a lot of people have become comfortable over the decades thinking, oh, this shit can't happen. And then every so often, something real fucked up in the world has to happen in order for people to realize how bad it can get. This coronavirus shit, that's just a taste. That's just a taste. Could you imagine being European in Europe, like during World War II, like while the shit was going down? You know what I mean? You're just in your little cottage and shit, and fucking tanks are rolling across your fucking lawn and shit. Just fucking, government troops running around, rounding up people and fucking taking them out. This is what I don't understand about black people. You know what I mean? Black people, I'm like, did we not experience slavery, right? Slavery was this terrible, tragic, humanitarian thing, right? And again, you look at the Holocaust and you look at, World War II, white people did to other white people. I'm like, if they're willing to do that to themselves, why are you so trusting of these motherfuckers? I don't understand that shit. You're an ex-slave population and you don't take up arms. You don't at least have a rifle in your house. You know what I'm saying? You go back in the past, and damn near every black person coming out of slavery was pro Second Amendment, but yet in today we're not, right? Because we've lost sight of who the actual real enemy is. And then on top of that, we have this issue with crime in the black community. So many of us stupidly think like, oh, everything will be good if we keep guns out of the hands of these young men. I was watching some video on active self-protection today, and it was a guy, and he had a gun on him, and there were two guys. They walked up to the car. He put his wife and his child in the car, and then these two guys rolled up at the gas station, and one of them pulled out a gun, and he saw them coming, so he was ready for it. He pulled out his shit, and he started firing, and they ran off. And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, liberals would be like, no guns for anybody. I'm like, so if both of those guys ran up with two, let's say they both have knives, right? Remember, the planes in 9/11 were hijacked with box cutters and sharp objects, right? So I'm like, regardless of it's 2-1. If you got two guys roll up on you with knives, that's a very bad day for you. That's going to be a bad day for you. They don't need guns. It just needs to outnumber you by one extra person. That's a bad day for you. I'm not trying to have a damn knife fight. I'm trying to have the force multiplier and be able to protect myself. You know what I mean? And it just blows my mind at how people are being fear-mongered into giving that up because bad things happen because, again, the people that we put in office don't want to actually do what's necessary to fix the root of these problems. To have this sort of gross inequality and then act like, oh, well, these people should just behave. That's not going to happen. That never happens. That never happens. That's the same bullshit that they're talking about in Israel with Palestine and shit like that. I'm like, so let me get this right. So you got all these people living in the fucking ghetto in Gaza, and they don't have shit. You know what I mean? They can't get what they need and everything else like that. I'm like, oh yeah, you asking for a bunch of young people to be on some fuck you, I'm willing to die for this shit, Allahu Akbar type shit. You're asking for that. And I look at white supremacy the same thing. I'm like, you're asking for more Micah Johnsons. You're asking for that shit. You know, this idea that, oh, you just need to accept and behave and follow our rules, even though our system doesn't benefit you. Like, I'm like, that's not going to happen. You know, freaking survival does not wait for assimilation. It never does. It never will. People are always going to recognize that they're in a shitty situation, and they're going to push back and they're going to fight back when they realize how rigged this shit is. It's one thing if it was fair and there was true upward mobility and all you got to do is go out here and opportunities, It would be one thing if it was that, but it's not that. And any person saying that it is lying and being intellectually dishonest. But anyway, I don't have much more else to say. That's just my rant. I'm sick of the media. I'm sick of fucking people who feed into the fucking media. You know what I mean? I'm sick of all this intellectual dishonesty going on. I'm sick of the lack of nuance. I'm sick of the lack of intelligent conversation. I'm sick of the fucking emotions. Everybody's all in their feelings and emotions. I'm sick of this shit. I'm so sick of it. Anyway, that's all I got to say. That's my video. SWP out.